Good morning, everyone. This is Janice Sellers. We will be starting the presentation in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to at least get the pictures on your screen so you can see what we're looking forward to. Thank you all for coming today. We're probably going to have better attendance at this than we ever do in person. Okay, it's 12 o'clock. Let's officially get started. So my name is Janice Sellers. I'm the coordinator of the African American Special Interest Group at the Genealogical Forum of Oregon. This is our second foray into an electronic presentation because, as all of you I'm sure know, we can't meet in person and we probably won't be able to for some time. So we are experimenting with modern technology so we can at least get together and share information. People don't have to feel quite so isolated, and with any luck, we will be learning things. Everyone will be muted during the presentation. If you want to ask Sherylita a question, you can go to the chat, which is at the bottom of your control screen on the right side, normally on the right side of your screen, and go ahead and type in your message. I'll be monitoring any messages people send. And then after Sherylita has finished the presentation, I'll go ahead and ask her questions at that time. There is no handout, so you're not missing one if you don't see it there. And since we have a fair number of people who have logged in now, it's probably a good idea to get started. Let me fix that. There we go. Yeah, we actually have 15 people here so far. This is wonderful. Thank you all very much for coming. And now, a little bit about Sherylita. So along with having been doing family history research for about 15 years, she got her first DNA test just after she started. So she has been incorporating DNA into her research pretty much from the very beginning. She administers 2 family genealogy groups. And she's helped roughly 12 bio families with her research, where she's been able to mediate connections between people who did not know they were related. She'll be talking about that. And she is doing this by using DNA and supplementing it with regular documentary family history research that we're all used to. Because almost all the time, the DNA in and of itself cannot give you an answer. You have to supplement it with regular documentation to prove what the connection is. And at this point, I'm going to let Sherylita take over. So Sherylita, you are live. Please tell us about your research.
Hi, Janice, and hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So this is my first webinar. It's not my first PowerPoint, but it is my first webinar. So I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for coming. And for those of you who are actually listening from across the country, hopefully some of my friends and family from across the country have logged in as well. And for my GFO African American Interest Group members, nice to see you logging on too. I miss you all. And I hope we're over this quarantine soon so we can get back together at the GFO. On the page here, you'll see this is just the introductory page, but I'm talking about connecting family past and present with autosomal DNA. And initially, I was really excited about taking the autosomal test. Well, I was hesitant. Once I took it, I was excited because I was going to be able to prove some or disprove some of my research. And so having a great representation online of my family was really helpful. So I was excited and I started looking through their results before mine came in to kind of grasp, what to expect. I did not expect, however, that I would be connecting with living family and connecting other people with their living family. So that was an experience that I wasn't expecting, and both go hand in hand. So that's what I'll be talking about today. Some of these people on my first page here are people that I've connected. Some of them are my ancestors. So it's just kind of a nice arrangement of images that I've collected through my successful research. Over to the far right in the upper hand corner is my first genealogy discovery, and that's my father. And at 23 years old, I met my father for the first time, and perhaps this is why I am the one who gets to connect people with their living family members. So I'm going to go ahead and start. And like Janice said, she'll be fielding the questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask any questions you might have. I don't really have a script. I'll just be talking about some things in my PowerPoint presentation. So let's move on to the second page. Of course, everything's supposed to work perfectly, right? Okay, Janice. There we go. Great. We got onto the second page. Success. So one of the first things that we ask when we're doing genealogy on any level, whether it's for the past or whether it's for the present, what exactly are you looking for? Are you looking to identify your third great grandparent, or are you looking to find a living parent? So that's the first thing that we have to decide when we're looking at our DNA results, is exactly what are we looking for and what direction to go in. By the way, these two ladies are two of my great grandmothers. Identifying close family or distant cousins to find common ancestors with DNA matches. These are some of the things that we'll be talking about in my future slides. Developing a tree from matches, trees to locate common ancestors. Oftentimes we have to build trees of our own because our matches don't have trees, or they have little trees. So we'll be talking about that. Utilizing ancestry or other non-traditional genealogy methods to locate living descendants. An online presence these days helps to collect information on people that were born after 1940. So that's one of the benefits of modern day research. Sharing matches to collaborate with other people. That's a big one. I don't think folks realize that you can actually share your matches and collaborate with other researchers to help in locating those common ancestors. And utilizing social media and other online resources to help identify relatives, because there's a lot of people on Facebook. In fact, I've reached out to people on Facebook and had more success than Ancestry. So okay, now I'm going to just say this. I utilize a lot of resources, materials. This is a Centimorgan chart, which we all have access to online, all these types of charts. So I'm just going to throw this out there that thank goodness we have people at our GFO that are scientific experts about DNA. I've utilized these tools, but I may not be able to answer any of your questions regarding the scientific part of DNA, other than just talking about centimorgans and how that relates to what we're looking for. We know if we're looking for a parent, we know that we're looking for, 3,000, around 3,400 centimorgans. We know that if we're looking for distant fifth cousins, we're looking for people with, 20, 15 centimorgans in that area. So these charts, which are available online, can help you identify those matches in your matches on Ancestry and other formats so that you know who you're looking for. Go to the next screen. And I'm just briefly going over some of the tools that I actually use in my research. And these are all things, again, that are online that are available to you. One of the programs that I use, and you'll see on the left side, you'll see a chart that's clusters, and can't really see a lot of detail here. I've kind of tried to make it private. But what this actually does is it takes our matches on Ancestry and it organizes them in such a way that you can actually see what family groups that your matches come from. Now, it is an app. You get it at the App Store, and it is a subscription service. So, and it only can be used on iPads and iPhones. So there is some restrictions with that, but there are other clustering programs like DNA Painter and other resources online that you can use for clustering. So that's not the only available one. I just like using that one. It's easy and I understand it. There's GEDmatch, which is another resource for researchers. Oftentimes, you want to find other matches from other websites, but you don't want to take a test. Lots of people upload their matches there. Upload their DNA results there and look for matches. Another resource or tool that I use in my research to identify, especially for living people that I'm trying to help find living relatives, is the leads method. And those charts are available. You can print some out online or you can make your own. And how to do that, there's plenty of explanation online how to do that. And then again, the centimorgan charts and knowing how many centimorgans and what relationships that you're looking for. That's pretty much, I think, the biggest one, just understanding and knowing what centimorgans represent what relationships and who you're looking for and how to identify them. And then lastly, which I use more than anything, good old-fashioned intuition and lots of digging. Just getting to know your matches, getting to know what their trees say. Ah, there we go. Okay. So I find that DNA is a dynamic tool that has a ripple effect. It's kind of like opening up a can of worms, really, in some situations. If you're looking for a birth parent, oftentimes you might find other people that are also looking for that same parent, or it might change someone's life just like it changes your life. So, or it can be an amazing thing and extend your family tree. I'd like to really talk about sharing DNA results to help others triangulate matches and remembering to share yours also. I don't know if you all are aware that you can do that. If you meet a cousin or have cousins or have family members that aren't doing anything with their DNA, one of the things that I have found is it's very beneficial to monitor the results of your aunts and uncles and cousins so that you can find potential ancestors or living cousins, because not everybody, of course, has the same DNA matches. And also developing good cousin bait. At Roots Tech recently, I went to Roots Tech, and one of the seminars I went to was about developing good cousin bait. You know, having a good online presence, showing that you're a serious researcher, having a welcoming profile, a blog, having groups on Facebook for your family, something that says that you are a serious researcher and that you're interested in collaborating. And build a rapport with people before you ask to see their tree or before you dive deep into their DNA results. Because the more that they realize that your mission is positive, that you're not just a creeper wanting to look at their tree, they're more than willing to share with you. And now you've met some new family, so that's the bonus. And with that, when you are meeting people and you are building that rapport, also helping other people build trees. I've built trees for a lot of cousins. Not everybody has the extra income for an ancestry account. So building trees and helping them have a tree on their results because that's what collaboration is about. And having that tree on the results also helps you to build your knowledge and your information about potential ancestors out there as well. And through all of that and trying to connect, try not to take it personal if people don't connect initially. Not everybody understands your mission. Not everybody takes the test to actually get into genealogy. Sometimes it takes people a while to respond to you. I've learned that often it does take a while to respond, but usually, 6 months down the road, when I least expect it, someone pops up with, hey, sorry I missed your message, but yes, I'm this person and I'm related to this family, and it's a real good source of information when they do. So just be patient with people. Sorry, it's a little slow. There we go. So this is one of the most, I think, when my DNA results came back, this was one of the most, I'd say, important finds of my research. My mother moved here in the early 50s to Portland, Oregon from the South. And her biological father was a mystery. So I was hoping, actually, initially, I didn't actually think doing my DNA test with Ancestry that I was going to find this type of information. I expected that I was using it for genealogy, for my research for ancestors for 3 or 4 generations back. I did not realize that potentially family members would have taken tests that are more recent that we could connect with. And first learning about centimorgans, I didn't quite understand when I saw an 889 centimorgan match with a man that didn't recognize as one of my living first cousins. I have lots of first cousins and lots of them have tested, but I did not recognize his name. And when I selected his tree, I realized that this was the family that we had heard a rumor that my mother might be related to. And it took me a couple of days to realize that this was her brother that she'd not met. And this is her brother. My mother's in the center. There's only one picture of my mother here, and she's in the center here. And her brother is to the left and right of her. And unfortunately, he took the test just before he passed away, so we didn't get to meet him. But the wonderful thing is he took the test, and I'm not quite sure why, but I'm glad he did, because it has opened up our ability to research that line and actually meet lots of living cousins. So that's the beauty of that. And that's why they've shared pictures with us and they've shared family history with us. So my mom and I have connected and built relationships with those family members. My mother and her brother are the children of Marvin. And if you look up in the upper left-hand corner, that's Marvin there. It's a colorized photo, by the way. MyHeritage, they're doing it for free right now, so upload your pictures. So this is the actual first picture that I saw saw my grandfather as an adult. And he is European. He's actually a little bit darker than his brother, but they are European. I found a little bit of African heritage in their history, but he's European. So that was the other shock of my DNA test, that we have a lot more European than I thought. So, and in the upper right-hand corner is William Thomas Body, who is my mother's half-brother. And that's also him there with the birthday cake. And after my mom took a test, it reflected that they shared 851 centimorgans. So we were able to, for sure, identify through William's test results and my mother's test results that Marvin is my mother's father. So that was one of the first finds like I said, I didn't expect it. I was more focused on, you know, confirming some research that I had done years before, looking for my great-great-grandmother's father. That was important. But I did not realize that I would immediately find this. This was my first close family find. See if I'm just gonna mess with the slide a little bit. Sometimes I think it might jump ahead, but no, it's not. Okay, so when I talk about connecting with family past and present, one of the benefits of connecting with present family is also that they have great DNA results, especially if they're more senior because they're more closer to those ancestors. So there is a match on my list and on the list of all my family members. And I noticed that she matched all of us very well. And I thought, well, I looked at her tree and she had a little tree, but it didn't add up how she matched our DNA. So I started sending messages to her saying, hello, we matched you. Can we talk to you sometime? Can we chat? Didn't hear from her. I thought, well, maybe she just doesn't want to be bothered. You know, I won't press it. We're all curious about her. One of the things that I noticed once I found her online, remember I said one of the ways to find out about people is to just go on Facebook or go on Google and see if you can track them down. I don't look at it as stalking. I just look at it as research and trying to connect with people. So in the upper left-hand corner is a lady named Alice. Alice is a very elegant, beautiful lady. And I assumed Alice was probably about in her 70s. Most of my father's first cousins and relatives, you know, that era are about in their 70s, mid 70s now. So I figured she was probably in that range. And I noticed on her Facebook page where I found this picture that she looked a lot like the gentleman in the photo where they're together on the right-hand side. And she really reminded me of him. And I thought, gosh, is it my imagination that these two look a lot alike? Again, I reached out to her on Ancestry, no answers for quite some time. So finally I got bold and I sent her a message on Facebook and I said, ma'am, you match a lot of my family members on Ancestry and we're all just curious about you and want to know, you know, you're related to us and, you know, are you trying to find anything about your family history? And she finally answered me back, which was really exciting because I've been looking forward to talking to her. And she explained to me that she was in her later 80s and that she had taken an ancestry test. Actually, she had two on there. She had taken an ancestry test to find out who her father was, that she never knew who her father was. And it was very nice that we were all related to her, but really she just wanted to know who her father was. So I said, well, see, that's the thing, man, that you're related to us, and I do help people find their families. And if you let me, I'd be willing to help you do that. But I had a sneaky suspicion already who she was related to. She lived in the same town in Illinois where my father lives and many relatives live. She looks like family that I already know. So once we went through the process of getting back into Ancestry and getting her account open and her sharing her results, and again, that didn't happen right away because I had to talk to her daughters and I had to develop a rapport because we're talking a senior citizen here. So remember, you know, it's very important to develop a rapport, not seem like a stalker or somebody that's trying to, you know, get into their private information. So I spoke with her daughters, I explained what I did, and I explained that I wanted to help their mother. And so we proceeded with getting into her results and her sharing those results with me. And I knew immediately when I saw the results who she was the sibling of, which I suspected the gentleman in the red shirt is her half brother. And, you know, I sat for a couple of days and tried to figure out for sure because there's quite a bit of an age difference. If I had an auntie situation or if I had a sibling situation, I wasn't quite sure. And I consulted people over it. You know, we have some great experts at GFO, so I consulted them about it, and I talked to other family members about it. My aunt, who is a lead genealogist in our family, I discussed it with her. Basically, what I discovered is Matthew and Alice share 1,647 centimorgans, and that they are brother and sister. And they are the children of the gentleman in the middle. That's Matthew Sr., born in 1898. So those two are the children of Matthew Sr. And as a bonus, she has other siblings as well. Again, a bit younger, but the beauty is that they've met each other and so they've all connected. And now down below, there's an arrow there to Velvet and Sandronetta, also my cousins. They're niece and aunt. So Sandronetta is Velvet. Sandronetta is over to the left and Velvet is to the right. And these two ladies resemble to me. I don't know, maybe it's just my imagination, but they were best friends in high school. So the good part about this is that they actually knew each other growing up a little bit, a lot of bit actually, because they were besties in high school. So there was not lost time there in getting to know newfound family because we had old friends. So, and also when I'm doing the research, I'm also gaining access and gaining knowledge about others' DNA results. So I'm not only utilizing current family connections, I'm also utilizing the DNA to help connect to our ancestors and break down some brick walls. And this leads me into the next slide, where I am trying to find the third level, the third generation of my great-great-grandfather, John Wesley Johnson. And I monitor about, I'd say 40 kids now on Ancestry and growing. So having access to several family members' DNA allows me to see how they match each other from their perspective. And I've gained a lot of knowledge about who matches who and how they match. And one of the different things that I've seen is I have cousins that are on two different lines that are matching each other, and it doesn't quite make sense. It didn't quite make sense at first, but then I realized after one of my cousin's results came in recently that he's in fact a double cousin related to me on two different lines, and he has a Johnson ancestor, and he matches a living Johnson relative who is part of the John Wesley Johnson line. And if you see here, it says, now let's see here, these little boxes are just parts of my family tree. But there's a Laura C. Johnson, who is the great-great-grandmother of Otis Dawson. And Otis and Berlin match, and Berlin is the great-great-great-grandson, I think, of John Wesley Johnson. Along with just Otis and Berlin matching, they also have quite a few shared matches. And sorry I had to mask everybody's names out, and it would really help me if I could just see it right here, but I had to mask for privacy reasons, but it does show the centimorgans that Otis shares with the people that he and Berlin match. I know these names, I know the people, so I know what lines they come from because I've gotten to know over time my cousin's DNA, and it has helped me to narrow in on where we all could potentially match up. There's other lines within our Caddo Parish community, which our family kind of comes out of from the mid 1800s. And some other cousins that I've met through my research on Ancestry have Emma Johnson in their line, and they also match Otis and Berlin, and quite a few of us. We even have a cousin as far as South Carolina that matches us, and so we're working on his end too to try to connect where we have that third or fourth great grandparent. We haven't gotten it yet, but we're still working on it, again, because several of us are collaborating, and that's what it really takes to get this job done, is it takes communication and collaboration and joining forces with other people online. So I can't emphasize that enough. So, and I hope you're listening, Basim. I hope you're online. This gentleman, his name is Basim, he contacted me back in July and asked me to help a young man that came up on his match list who was looking for his biological family. And I will get to that later, the person that he introduced me to. But as usual, whenever I get the ear of a passionate genealogist, I always ask, well, what are you doing? What is your research? And at that time, Basim explained to me that he was looking for his biological father. And of course, I, asked him so far what it had he done with his research, and he was very passionate. Had been researching for a couple of years already, and it met lots of cousins, lots of lower centimorgan matches online, but he just hadn't quite. He knew what families that he came from, but he had not quite narrowed it down yet. Mind you, he matched a distant cousin of mine. I mean, a distant cousin, or one of my cousins, very distantly. So that means Basim is also my cousin. But the opportunity to help him came up, and I said, well, why not? Because not only does it allow me to build my skills as a genetic genealogist a bit more, but it also helps me to maybe research some of my family's history, break down some brick walls. This was a long process, I must say. We spent 9 months of researching ancestors, primarily in Carolina and Cumberland County, Virginia. Again, he'd already been researching for 2 years prior to contacting me about Mark, our mutual cousin. Basim also participated in researching and connecting with cousins to find common lineage. But again, most of them that he one of the, well, ran into quite a few barriers when doing his research. And part of that was that he reached out to higher centimorgan matches who were unable, meaning they didn't have the information, or unwilling to provide information regarding potential common ancestors or immediate family. That can be a big barrier when trying to connect online with people, because contacts online are often looked at suspicious. So it kind of got frustrating, but again, he and I were both very persistent, so we just pushed through and finally decided that the best way to find his father, who we were looking for, was to build a tree for a match he had that was 238 centimorgans, because that person was closely enough related to him to identify and identify hopefully. Now, the thing is I think that the journey that we took was appropriate. If we had started with that 238 centimorgan match, I don't believe that we would have identified it because we would not have known the names to look for. We built a tree of over 5,000 potential ancestors. And so I have a really good knowledge of the genealogy of Cumberland and Caroline County, Virginia, based upon the lineage of his matches. Oftentimes we ran into people who had very small trees or incorrect trees, or so we had to build trees for them as well. So one of the things that I do, and definitely make this tree private if you're going to do this. It's built what we call a dirty tree. It's not really a dirty tree, it's just a research tree. But again, make it private, make it shareable, but make it private because you don't want people coming along and copying it because your information may not be accurate. You don't have to put the stuff on your main tree. Again, Ancestry, you can build unlimited trees. So basically, we just started to put names in the tree and found where people were connected in the different communities, knew what names to look for. Finally, when building this tree for this 238 centimorgan match, we ran into a Dolly Wright, who was the daughter of George Wright. And as we went back on the census report for George Wright, we saw at the very bottom of the page, if you look, it's kind of hard to read, census reports. If you look at the lower left-hand corner, you'll see a big circle there. There's a grandson in the household born about 1932, and his name is Charles. He has the last name of Wright. And initially I said, well, grandson, that's nice. As you know, they don't necessarily populate into the family tree unless they have a parent that they're assigned to, and there was no parent for him here. And that was also suspect that there was no parent, which means that the grandparents were raising him. But I went back and I looked at this grandchild, and I just looked and stared at it until something popped up. And if you look at Basim's tree, this is his real tree. This is what we call the Wright tree. His great-great-grandfather, Carrie Dean, we knew his great-great-grandparents. Those are easy to find when you're doing this research, by the way. You can find all kinds of great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents before you find the father or the mother that you're looking for. But we knew the Dean family. We knew some of these names already. What we didn't know is that Carrie Dean was married prior to, well, we knew that Carrie Dean had 8 children or 6 children, a large number of children with a wife, and it always pointed in the direction of them. What we didn't know is he had a first wife who had passed away, and he and that first wife had a son, and that son's name was Robert Dean. And if you see right below Charles, right there in the same neighborhood, is a gentleman named Robert Dean. And we guesstimated that Robert Dean, or one of his sons that's not living in the household, may be related to Charles. So we went online and made some connections or found some obituaries for living people that were related to that family and reached out and made some connections. Put in a phone call to Charles through another family member. That family member found out that indeed Mr. Robert Dean is Charles's father. And bingo. If you look over at Basim's DNA matches, you see now that his mother there has a 3,407 centimorgan match, and Charles, who's taken a test, is Basim's match at 3,357 centimorgan. So we found Basim's father, and that's really exciting for him because it's been quite a couple of years of intense research for him, and he has since made contact with Charles. Now, earlier I mentioned that DNA has a ripple effect, and during our research, when we reached out to the higher centimorgan matches, we surmised that they may not know that their family lines were a bit different than what they expected. So that we knew would be a surprise. For some other people, that their lineage was going to be different. So on this next page is Basim and his biological sister, Alberta. And up until this past week, they had not been in contact. Basim had reached out to Alberta, hoping to talk to her about their connections, and that didn't happen right away. That's one of the things that I talk about, that sometimes people don't want to talk to you. And that's okay. Sometimes you have to let that go. But at the same time, I've seen people turn around, and I'm happy to say that they're in contact with each other, and he's helping her through that process of finding out parental event not expected. So we're all working on that together, and she's going to be taking a DNA test soon. So I'm glad he's there. I'm glad he has the answer for her, because oftentimes when taking DNA tests, people don't have the answer. So this is what I've gleaned from helping Basim, besides gaining a new cousin and gaining more family, is that he and his father, his biological father, both match people in my family, very distant cousins. And that's what I look for when trying to find, to try to break down brick walls. I'm looking for people with low centimorgan matches. And all of these people that I've masked out over here on these two charts, the DNA matches, are actually cousins that I know, living cousins that I know. And it shows that both Basim and his biological father match us. So I'm very excited to get working on this project now that we've found and located his biological father. I'm really excited to start working on breaking down the brick wall of my second great grandfather, Richard Foggy, born in 1934. He's from North Carolina. He was a formerly enslaved man. And so far, our family hasn't been able to find out who his father was, or so hopefully that will be happening in the next, in the immediate future or near future, that we're able to break down that brick wall for our family. That means a lot. And this is, again, this is a family surprise. Surprises do happen when you take a DNA test. Some things you don't expect. You find things out about family members that you weren't expecting to. And the lady on the left, this is her high school yearbook picture. I found it on Ancestry. She was born in 1935. Her daughter took a DNA test and matched my grandmother's sister, who took a DNA test for us as well, which is great. She matched her, the daughter matched my aunt at 889 centimorgans. And again, I have a lot of cousins, so initially I didn't think much of it, but I started to dig a little bit and realized her tree didn't match our family tree, and I had to do my due diligence and do my research and discovered that Doris is my grandmother's half sister. Now, my grandmother has 12 siblings that she grew up with, and I didn't realize that she had another sibling, so this was quite a surprise for me, at least. I had never heard of Doris, but this was quite a surprise for our family. And it took me a while before I addressed this with my grandmother's sister, who took the test, because I just didn't know how to address it. But I finally did, and she told me, "Oh yeah, we knew." So big secret. I'm surprised, but I didn't know. It was news to me. So this is one of those times where a family member takes a DNA test, and this is my oldest daughter's paternal lineage. I noticed that she had several matches from a specific family with a unique name. And because I already knew her other lines and I knew that this represented something that was an unknown, of course, that led me to research and find out who these people were. Now, her grandparents are her paternal grandparents are in the upper right-hand corner there. And her grandfather, unfortunately, passed away in the last 6 years. So, but I grew up with them as my neighbors, and so I knew that he was not quite sure of his paternal line, that was kind of a mystery, and so we didn't quite know. And when I was building her tree, I didn't know who to put there. So when this opportunity came up, I started digging a little bit deeper. There was a match that I'd sent a message out to a couple of months ago, didn't get an answer, forgot about it. So I knew, though, based upon the approximate age and when he was born, but I didn't know exactly which one it would be. I finally got an answer from a 400 centimorgan match that her father was James Robert Cephas, and I realized that this match was also her grandfather's half sister. So this was her great aunt that had taken a test. And we now know that most likely this gentleman in the middle is the father of her grandfather. So this is my daughter's great grandfather in the middle. When I spoke about people not necessarily wanting to have the information or understanding your research, I reached out to family members and basically was told, thanks, but no thanks. So I'm not quite sure if they understand that I found their father's lineage. So I'm interested in building our family tree, and sometimes people aren't interested in that type of thing, and I understand that. So that's one of the things you have to realize when you start digging in DNA, that sometimes it brings up things that other people don't want to talk about. So the best thing that you can do is continue to build your tree and save the information in case down the road they have an interest. But we do know something now that we never knew, and that's that Camille is a descendant of free people of color from Maryland from the mid 1700s and possibly earlier. So that is some amazing information to find out. Sorry, my connection's a little slow, so I'm trying to wait for the next screen. Remember earlier when I mentioned that Basim, who we found his father, had called me or connected me with a cousin named Mark. Mark is the gentleman, you see there's a cousin, a shared screen there with Melissa and Mark. And this ties into each other because within a month, I was connected with both of these cousins. Mark is the gentleman there with the bald head. That's my cousin Mark. And he was looking for his biological family. He was adopted. That's going to be his mother in the upper right-hand corner. Her name is Susan. And when Mark and I spoke on the phone, I said, well, who's your highest match? And he told me, and I said, well, that would be your uncle, and I'll put you in touch with him, and you can talk to him about the family history, and he'll help you. Because I knew that that his uncle would know the most about his sister and be able to explain things for Mark. Because I didn't I didn't quite know, how to explain certain things, and I feel a closer family member would be better to do that. So Mark was able to talk to his uncle Rashid, and that was great because he made that very important connection. And there's Mark there in the middle, it's a little boy, so he shared those images with me. Prior to meeting Mark, I ran across a match that was interesting on Ancestry. And it was interesting because Melissa looked a little bit different than the rest of the family, but she matched us rather high. So I wondered who she was. I contacted her, and I contacted her before she knew her results were in. So this was real interesting. But I contacted her on Facebook and I said, hey, your results are in on Ancestry, and I'm just curious, who you are, what you might be looking for. And she didn't even realize that her results were there, and she didn't realize several things that were new information to her. So she told me a little about herself, and I contacted my father because she's related to me on my father's side. And I said, do you know anything about this lady or these folks that were from this certain town? And he relayed what little information he had, but he said, well, I'll ask around. And coincidence happened. A cousin called him and chatting, and my dad said, my daughter has an unusual match on Ancestry. Lady matches us, and is curious to know if you know anything about it. And he shared some basic information, and the cousin said, man, I've been looking for my daughter for over 50 years, or my child for over 50 years. And this was Father's Day weekend that we had this discovery. So if you look down below, there's a picture, a side-by-side picture of Melissa and her father. And I really wanted them to talk on Father's Day. I thought that would be really special, but she was so nervous, and she was, um, quite overwhelmed with her results and this new information that I had to give her some time. But she called me Monday, and I had spoken with her father already, and everything matched up. And I got his phone number, and I spoke with her on Monday, spoke on the phone, and I said, I have the information, I have some good information for you, that I've located your father, and here's his phone number. And when you're ready to call him, he's expecting your call. So I think she took a couple of days to do that. But since then, he's taken a test. This is William, and they match at 3,399 centimorgans. So they are, in fact, father and daughter. And again, the bonus of all of this, and meeting Mark and Melissa, which are first cousins, they have a 604 centimorgan match. They are first cousins. Is that now I have information regarding our family lineage between Mark and Melissa and her father, that I'm able to look back through their DNA and connect us with our ancestors, from hopefully to help break down some more brick walls. So now I'll let you all read this. This is something that Melissa sent me recently. This is part of her journey. If you notice on the previous slide, on her personal page, on her statement, on her profile, she says that she's been forced all of her life to question her ethnicity and never knowing for sure where she fit in. That she had been adopted by family members, but she had no idea of her true identity. And she says, I think if I can find some other people who share my DNA, it could help me find some peace, and the rest of my life is not in question anymore. This is the first thing I read. She since has changed the statement, but I'm glad I was able to screenshot that, because I knew from that she was looking. So I have if you read the statement here, unfortunately, this webinar thing, let's see, sorry, you see this, move this over a little bit. I don't think you can see that. She says, on February 24th of this year, I walked into a McDonald's and very calmly said I was looking for a Mr. Edwards. Melissa and her father had talked on the phone for a good 8 months, and they'd not met or even seen each other in person. So she surprised him. She lives in California and he lives in Illinois, so getting together is not very easy for them. But another cousin, Mark, met him in Illinois and surprised him, and they went out to eat. I don't think they were really eating at McDonald's, but anyway, just go to get some coffee or something and just sitting in there chatting. That's the first connection between him and his sister's son. And it was a planned surprise between Mark and Melissa to surprise her father, William. So I'm going to show you part of a video where she walks in and surprises him. It's very touching. And this is the reason why I do what I do, because I know from my own experience that making those living family connections is just as important, if not more important, than connecting with our ancestors. And this is part of my research, that it's not just research, it's connecting our families together. She says, on February 24th of this year, I walked into a McDonald's and very calmly said I was looking for a Mr. Edwards. And when he turned to look to see who was saying his name, he did a double take and we both began to cry. I finally got that hug that I didn't know I was missing and had waited 54 years for. It was the most amazing feeling I've ever felt. I was home. For those of you who are adopted or don't know birth parents, that's a feeling that you can't describe, being connected with family, missing family. My cousin had already surprised him that evening, and then I was able to surprise him. And in looking into the eyes of my father, I found something I'd never realized I was looking for or missing all my life. With that first hug, I knew I'd finally found my place. So I'm going to play a bit of the video. I'm going to play the whole video. And excuse some of the noise in there. There's some kitchen noise going on, but you'll get the point when you see it. Of course, if it plays.
We were Mr. Edwards. Edward here. Yeah, one to see. See it with the wrong one, and I'm really distracted by 4 years of this time. Please. Oh, I love you. Surprise. God would be with the light. I told you. From March. Oh,
So I actually want to go back. I guess that's the end of my slideshow though, but I don't really want to exit, but there was part of my slideshow that I did miss, and it was a very important part of my research. And so I'd actually like to go back and pick that up because if you can see that, sorry, it's not, not on the slideshow, but this part I did miss, and it was a very important part because it has to do with the past. And this was one of the first things I wanted to prove with my DNA, that we were connected to the family of Mr. Hiram Dennis. My great-great-grandmother, Cora Dawson Dennis, was born in 1867, so this was post-Civil War. Her mother and her siblings had been enslaved people, so she was the first person born outside of enslavement in that family line. And I did not know who her father was. And of course, based upon some family verbal history, I found some folks that I thought we might be related to. The only document that I found in my research that identified her father was a Mr. Alan Dennis here on her death certificate. And again, death certificates are just based upon what the reporting party knows. So I wasn't sure if, it was the Dennis family that I'd found in my research, and it was quite extensive to locate Alan. So I just needed to know, I guess, through our DNA, and if we were in fact linked to these people. I identified her father before DNA as a Alan Dennis, born about 1835. I used traditional genealogy research, census reports, things like that. When I identified that we did in fact match the family through my DNA, the DNA of my great aunt and mother, I realized that my great aunt matched 21 people through Hiram Dennis, the father of Alan Dennis. So these are his siblings, or some of his siblings, Eleanor, John L. Dennis, and Hiram Smith Dennis. I see right there that we're related to 21 people. Since my Aunt Martha is the granddaughter of Cora Dawson Dennis, then her results are going to reflect the higher DNA matches. And so here, my research has been confirmed that we're in fact related, and that Alan Dennis is most likely, confirming what her death certificate says, her father. And that lineage, his parents' lineage, takes me far back as my 32nd great grandparents, 925. So it takes me pretty far back on that line. And Frank Dawson, who was her older brother by about 20 years, is a formerly enslaved man. And we are currently looking for his paternal line through some DNA results of an older cousin that has tested. So we're looking forward to being able to get that research done. And I'd like to thank you for coming and listening this afternoon to my presentation. And if anyone has any questions. Also, I can be reached at, there's my email address. So you can reach out to me, my email address, any questions you might have, or any research that you might want to share with me. Thank you.
We had a few questions during your talk that were mostly administrative. One person asked about the Krista Stallcup relationship chart, and I found that online and sent the URL out.
Oh, good. Thank you.
If anybody else does have questions, you can put them in the chat box, and then I'll be able to pick them up from there. Thank you all very much for coming. We had 22 people attending, which is far more than we've ever had in person. So I'm very, very happy that Sherylita was able to give this talk today, because it obviously attracted a lot of interest from people. I'm going to be working on another online talk for our next meeting, which will be May 16th on Saturday, is when it would normally be scheduled. So that's what I'm going to be shooting for. Anybody has any ideas on what you might like to hear for a talk, or if you want to get together as just a meeting where we can interact like we would normally do in person, let me know and I will see what I can facilitate. I'm looking to see if we have any more questions coming up, and so far not. Well, I guess everybody had either no questions or you're planning on emailing her directly. So thank you all very much for coming. We really appreciate it. Good luck with all of your genealogy research, and look for more announcements about upcoming events. And this session was recorded. We're going to figure out a way that we can post that so people can hear it again if they want to. And other than that, I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar. Thank you very much for your talk today. We really appreciated it. And everybody stay healthy. Goodbye.